No, thank you.
Hey, hello. Welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project. Yay! Hey, Tiffany.
Hi, Yolanda.
How you doing today, doll?
I'm here. Sometimes that's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah. Now that you say that, just for everyone to know, I mean, we usually kind of do a little catch up at the beginning if you're new to the show before we get into our topic. But behind the scenes, we're just talking about this today being off. And it just dawned on me, I think this kind of stirring happens for a lot of us at end of year. Like
Mm.
because, well, one, we're very close to the winter solstice, which, creates a big transitional shift. But I think too, there's this like undercurrent of we feel like there's so much we have to wrap up or get done. And did I complete everything? Do you know, even like unconsciously, on top of also considering all the things we want to do in the year ahead. So I think
Hmm.
a lot of us kind of go haywire around this time, plus the holiday.
Yes. I think it's just subconsciously embedded in us that there's all this upheaval kind of, and we anticipate it and we kind of lose our footing.
Yeah, because
That's what it feels like.
we're pre-recording this even, but by the time this actually airs and you all see it, the solstice will only be a few days away, and then again the holiday, and then New Year and the planning. So everybody take a breath.
I
Wherever you
forgot,
are.
you just said solstice, and I'm like, didn't we do that already? And I just realized that we haven't yet even approached the winter solstice.
No,
Holy smokes.
I know, but it's coming. So for those of you, speaking of that, our Patreons, we always do a energy of the month update for our MBE insiders. And so for those of you who haven't checked the energy update of the month yet, we do have information in there for you around the energy of the entire month, including the solstice. So hopefully that will be helpful for you, for whatever is coming up for you energetically
Hmm.
at this time.
And
And
maybe if not helpful, at least supportive.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
sometimes we don't know what to do with it, but if we hear something that kind of validates what's happening, that's good enough sometimes.
Heck yeah, because then we don't feel like kookaburds. Like we're just like, oh, okay, makes sense. And now I can just, kind of adapt and move through it. But
Right.
one of the things we wanted to say is thank you for all the participation and feedback for our last topic, which was spirit guides.
Hmm.
That's always a fun, juicy topic and so very interesting. And to keep it in the same vein of different things that we play with and tools that we use and practices available, this week we're talking about using Oracle and tarot cards. So just a disclaimer, there are so many different schools of thought and ways and methods to use cards. And so we're going to talk to you today, as always, from our own experiences and our own points of view. And we invite you to share whatever comes up for you as well, and maybe tools and techniques that help you. So just want to
Hmm.
start out with that. What
I'm
about
very
you,
excited
Dal?
about this topic.
I know, I'm looking at my cards. I just got a new tarot deck. Oh God, I'm always getting new decks. But I just got the traditional Rider Waite, but in the radiant color. So the colors are more vivid than the traditional deck. So it's
Oh,
like, oh
yeah.
yeah. I'm like, ooh, look at all the
What
colors.
does what does the back of it look like?
Stars.
Ooh,
And then I
pretty. I
also
have the traditional Raider white.
Rider
Oh my
Waite,
God. Yes. My
Rider
brain,
Waite
my
Smith,
circuits are crossed. Yeah. I like the background of this one, the little plaid.
the plaid. Well,
Yeah.
I also got a tarot coloring book recently, which has been so meditative and amazing because it helps you to also connect with the cards, but we'll talk about that later.
Ooh, I like that idea. I'm gonna have to get myself one of those.
I know it's really,
Mm.
really fun. So, one of the things I just want to say, because we were talking about spirit guides last week and or the last 2 weeks, and one of the things that's works hand in hand with that is our intuitive development. And so on one hand, it's very important to first be very grounded and rooted into yourself and present in your being before you start accessing these other realms of consciousness. And then there are so many different ways that we can learn to strengthen our intuition. I mean, and who knows, we'll talk to you about so many things over time. But oracle cards were actually my first like delve into my intuition and to start playing with it all. That really was like my step one with intuitive play. What about you? What connected you with oracle cards and tarot cards?
That's a good question. As you were saying that, I was trying to go back in my mind and figure out where it all began, and I don't remember. I've always just been very intrigued with intuition, and I was always very intuitive as a kid, and just always been kind of witchy, I guess,
Yeah.
growing up. So it's almost like it was always a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember or recall when I got my first deck or when I started using them. It was just always, it kind of was like a seamless experience into it.
Well, for me, I remember hearing about tarot. I don't remember when or like how, but I just remember there was such a stigma attached to it. And this is like back in the day before everybody was talking about all of these things so openly and freely. I mean, it was even pre-internet. So, you know, you had limited points of view about a lot of things. And the tarot, I had heard like the negative connotations around it, and seeing some of the cards in there, of course, it was like, ooh, that's kind of creepy. But fast forward into when I got into Reiki and all of this stuff, I don't know what it was, but there was something that like I was drawn to oracle cards. And I thought like, oh, maybe these will be interesting because they'll give you like, I felt like they were training wheels in a way to help you allow information to come through, but then you have this visual representation to confirm or affirm what may be coming through intuitively, or even to give you the practice of learning how to read beyond or perceive, I guess I should say, beyond the analytical mind. So, so I started with Oracle. Oracle. And there was a woman who created a deck based on the chakras. And so she was my first Oracle teacher. And then it just opened a can of worms, as everything does. Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking back, my first experience into all of stuff like with something tangible was a Ouija board.
Oh, Jesus.
And I know. And I was a kid. It was just a game, you know, and I don't remember where it came from. I feel like it was a gift. Honestly, I'll have to ask my parents, and I doubt they'll remember, but I don't think that I picked it out. I think they had bought it for me or for us, you know? So that's an interesting thing I'm going to have to look into when I'm home for Christmas.
That's so funny.
But I remember doing it, like playing with it as a kid, and it was really interesting. I never felt weird about it. I felt very curious and intrigued by it and how it worked and what it was all about. And I remember playing with some friends that were all weirded out about it. And, you know, so whatever the idea behind what the Ouija board was, you know, they're like some friends, their parents probably told them like it's satanic, you know, or don't be drumming up the spirits, you know. And in my household, and again, like my parents they're not really into all this stuff I'm into, but they didn't seem to care, you know? So it's just interesting to see the perspectives that are passed down and then how we perceive things. Because what I'm excited about this topic is to kind of demystify it, the tarot cards and oracle cards, and also redeem them in some way, because people do see them as satanic, you know, or the work of the devil, which it's not the cards, it's the person.
Well, one of the things too, it's interesting you say that. What you said about the Ouija board reminded me of exactly that. So a friend of mine, growing up, she had one, and it did creep me out. But it's funny because like with my mom, none of this stuff creeped her out ever. But then on the other hand, my grandma would be like, no, like all this stuff. So I had two very different perspectives like fed to me growing up, and my grandma kind of trumped my mom for me, but you know, whatever. But one of the things too is that without intention, a lot of these different tools, they can open you up to other realms, and you can connect with lower frequencies if you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So that's why it is also important that you do have some like basic foundation for yourself. One, like learning how to manage your own field, your own energy, but intention is huge. So before we even get into like what oracle cards are and just demystifying and like how to use them and all of these things, one thing I always recommend to people is create a sacred space for reading, but also clear your deck as soon as you get it. So like this deck, again, I literally just got it in the mail yesterday. And one of the first things I did was like hold it in between my hands, do this whole like clearing of them, setting an intention to connect the cards themselves with higher frequencies, connecting myself with the cards, like this whole intentionality that goes into them prior to even using them. And just like you said, like all of these tools, even energy work, it's all kind of neutral, and the user is what creates or decides what type of energy is going to be facilitated, like, you know, higher or lower energy. So just like you said, I mean, it is the person. Some people could use these in a dark way, and then other people could choose to use them in a light way, and it's totally person specific.
And I think that's an important topic to bring up, that these cards aren't the ones that are doing the work. The person who's using them is. And I think a lot of times why I said demystifying them is because I think some people see these cards and are like, oh, the cards have the energy on themselves that are going to lead what the reading is, or tell you your future, or tell you bad things or good things. And it's not the cards, it's the person that's reading them. And like you said, what intention you set to get information out of them, because the information that we actually receive from the cards is everything we already know that's inside our field and inside our subconscious. And they help highlight and bring out that knowledge to the surface, to our conscious mind.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of, I was trying to think of a way how to describe it to people who may be completely new to this, but it's literally how we talk about all the time on the Mind Body Energy Project. You know, everything is energetic. Within your field, there are energetic impressions, memories, ideas, stories. I mean, you're generating and projecting out energies all the time. And what happens when you read cards or someone is reading for you, they intentionally connect with your energy and frequency, also connecting the cards to your frequency or energy. And then if you have specific questions, also like it's almost like calling forward those imprints that are in your field of, this is the information I want to reveal. The information's already in your space. It's just, let's reveal it. And so you can use the cards as a way to paint a picture or tell the story, or to highlight what is going on with you or another person energetically. And then, you know, of course, then comes in how you translate what comes through. And we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Okay. So one of the things really quickly too, for myself, creating sacred space, because if people wonder how to do that, there are even cloths, like reading cloths, pieces of material that you can buy to set out as part of your like reading ritual, that you lay your cards out on, and you use that cloth specifically for your readings. And it all is part of like creating this energetic space and buildup of whatever your intention is. Some people like candles, some people smudge, some people do a short meditation, connect with their guides. I mean, you could do a whole litany of things. Is there anything specific that you personally like to do before reading?
I like to ground, making sure that I'm in a space where I'm focusing on what it is I want to get out of the reading versus just kind of like throwing cards out there and seeing what's happening. Because I've done both. And I know if I'm just like willy-nilly pulling cards and my mind's kind of everywhere, then whatever's coming up, I don't get the intended message, you know, or I could read it and I could apply it to something else, and it makes me a little bit manic because it's not what I was thinking about and I don't understand how it's connecting. Whereas when I'm grounded and I know that I have set everything else aside for that time where I'm going to sit down and do a reading, meditate on what it is that I want to get out of my field of understanding, then it's much more directed and I'm grounded, the reading is grounded, and the result of the messages that I'm getting back is grounded.
It's really good that you say that, because a lot of times too, I think what happens is when we are reading cards, especially for ourselves, is we may have in mind what we want the result to be, or what we want the cards to say. Like, we have in our mind what we want the answers to be. And so say you ask a question or want clarity around something, and you pull a card and the card is not what you wanted to hear. Don't keep pulling cards just to get what you want to hear. Yeah. The beauty of this is that it helps you to receive information beyond your analytical mind and beyond your personal stuff, and allows you just to read the pure energy of the situation, whether it's the energy you hold, the energy of another person, or the energy of the situation in its entirety. And then if you pull a card and you're like, I don't know how this relates, pull more cards for clarity. And the position of the cards will play a big role. And I guess we'll talk about that.
Yeah, interesting. A few weeks ago, I had a friend over and we were talking about something totally different, but I had the cards and she had never had a reading before. So I pulled some for her, and it was interesting because it was spot on of everything we were talking about. And I like to do a little trick and have somebody pick a card for me. And so she picked a card for me, and it was a broken heart card. And I was like, oh my God. And at first, like, because I wasn't grounded for my own personal reading, I saw the card and kind of panicked a little bit. And then I read in the Oracle book, like, you know, the description. And it was interesting because my friend received the message differently when I read from the book. And I don't even know that she knew she did it, but she gave me kind of an intuitive reading on her own. So what she was saying to me, I was like, oh, wow, it was really interesting to see her be grounded in it and give me the reading back, even though she didn't know she was doing it. But it was totally different than what my manic mind, I was ungrounded at the time. So what manically I was applying to it and what she gave me back. So it was cool to see the dichotomy of the situation.
Well, that, I think it speaks to the importance of building a relationship with the deck. So Tiffany and I both have different decks to show you, just to give you an idea of the range of cards. But for example, like I had this is again the Radiant deck, but I had the original Rider-Waite deck. I have it, but I wasn't really connecting to the imagery of it. So then I wanted a different tarot deck, which images I liked. So I got the Deviant Moon Tarot, which I like the images of it. But then I went back to
the original?
Yeah, well, because it's a really good foundation to me for building a deep relationship with tarot. And tarot is different than oracle, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to focus, like currently right now, I'm more focused on tarot than oracle. And so the Rider-Waite Smith deck is a great starting deck for that. But your relationship with the cards is very important. So not only like energetically connecting with the cards and having intention and all of this, but getting to know the meanings. So one, you can study the meanings of the cards. Every card comes with a booklet, and that's fine. But to what your point is, Tiffany, when we start really acknowledging the way we read and the way messages come through for us, it may go far beyond what the book is saying. So just like very basic, like some people are very visual. So the card is called the Fool, although he's not really foolish, but we're not going to get into it. But so some people will study the definitions of the card and they'll think like, oh, okay, I'm just going with what the book says, or I'm going to read the book as I'm reading. But if you intuitively look at the card and just notice what you feel, like looking at that image, do you get a feeling about something? How would you translate that feeling? If you look at the image and something in the imagery stands out to you, how would you describe what it is that you're seeing, right? And then you pull another card, say there's another card in the reading, then you have a story to tell. Now, how do those two cards relate to each other? What are the two images saying? How do they interact? So the point is, yes, building relationship goes beyond just reading the definitions. That's a great foundation, but also start to notice how the cards speak to you. That's all I had to say about that. my
had
God.
somewhere to go with that, but I lost my train of thought.
Well, it's good to have like one, because listen, I can't even tell you guys how many decks I have, but it's good to at least have a strong relationship with at least one deck, like one that you feel really called to, resonates with you, so that you can deepen that practice of relationship building and reading beyond the definitions. What deck
Yeah,
are you drawn to?
I have a very strong relationship with my energy oracle cards. I
Mm-hmm.
was really drawn to just this picture on here.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I got the deck, even like the backs of the cards, I'm really drawn to. But the actual cards themselves are so vastly different,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very different from the tarot cards. But I don't know, there's just something about them that they are spot on every time I do a reading for other people or for myself. And they're dramatically different, like I said. So to see them kind of puzzle piece their ways together in readings is always really interesting. And it's just, I don't know, they're like my friends. Like,
Yeah.
I just understand how they're communicating.
Right.
And I've been working with them for a long time.
Well, since you're bringing up the way they're communicating, I guess like one of the things we should go over are spreads and the position of the cards, because you can say you had a question, like, like, I don't know, just a question, and you pulled one card, you could just go with that one card. But usually when you see people do readings, they lay out numerous cards. But what is key is that each card's position has meaning. So very simple, like a lot of people do 3-card spreads. So like the first card could represent the past, the second card represents the present, the third card represents the future. Or like I like to look at the energy of a situation. So the first card I pull will be the energy of the situation in its entirety. The second card will be the energy of the person and how they are relating to it. The third card might be a challenge or obstacle for them. And then I'll pull an additional card to show the energy of what would support them in moving forward. So the reason that matters is because if you pulled, like, say, the Fool card in the past position, it may translate differently than if you pulled it in the future position. So the position the cards are in also season the meaning of the card. I guess that's the way I would say it. Do you read like big spreads, or how do you do it?
Every once in a while, I'll do a big spread, but I don't do them too often because they can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's usually like past, present, and future. And sometimes I do a signifying card. So the one card that kind of sets the tone for the past, present, and future.
Yeah. One thing
Sometimes I'll
too,
just pull 1 or 2 cards.
do you ever, this is what I tend to do, like mostly what I'll do is I connect with the deck, connect with the person, and I will ask intuitively, like, what is the spread for this reading? Like, how should I lay out the cards, and what are the positions of each card? So it's like I'm literally seeing a picture in my mind's eye of like, this is how the cards are laid out. This is what each card means. And then I go from there. Try it.
I typically do, I do readings after my Reiki sessions. So somebody comes for a Reiki session, and the card readings are usually kind of just for fun, just to see what comes up. But 97% of the time, whatever we have debriefed about what happened in the Reiki session, 97% of the time the cards are emulating exactly what we had discussed as messages. So
Yeah.
that's always really interesting to see the validation of that.
Now that you say that, one thing too, I want to point out for people, especially if whether you've read or not, you already are a reader, whatever. One thing that's really interesting that happens, and this is where the whole practicing of trusting yourself comes in. I remember one time, this happens all the time, but this example I'll give you. One time when I first started my podcast, I used to take live calls, and there was this woman who called and she wanted like a card reading. I think I was doing card readings on that episode. And we spoke behind the scenes, and she wanted a card reading very specific to her relationship. Like, I don't remember if she wanted a boyfriend or if she had a boyfriend, but either way. So I pulled the cards for her, but the messages that were coming through were about her relationship with one of her parents. And so all of this information was coming up about the relationship about her parents, not the boyfriend, but I had to trust and go with it. And it ended up like leading to that dynamic between her and whichever parent it was, you know, part of why she was having the experience she was in the relationship with a boyfriend. So I say that to say, sometimes when you pull cards, you may have a sense that what's coming up is different than the question that was asked. Trust it and just see how it unfolds, because it may actually be speaking to, you know, it may be related, just not in a way yet that you can fully see.
Yeah, that had come up earlier. And I'm sure we got diverted on a different path, but the trusting of the cards and trusting yourself to understand what the message is huge. And that takes practice, and that takes kind of surrendering to knowing, well, one, just trusting that you're understanding it as it's coming through. But then the other thing is kind of letting down your own guard.
Right.
Because like you said earlier, we can read things with an intention of what we want to hear, but to be open to hearing what's necessary is a whole another can of worms.
Yeah.
And the other thought that I had too, it's kind of separate from this, is that I like that example that you gave, because the cards are very therapeutic. And for me, I've always kind of seen them as like another talk therapist, if you will, you know, a different kind, because you can do this for yourself. We're self-healing, whether it's like physical, mental, or emotional, we have the capabilities of doing it. So being open to seeing like, yes, she wanted a boyfriend, or she wanted to fix whatever situation was with her boyfriend, but there's all of these other things in her life. It wasn't just subjective to that idea of that relationship with her boyfriend, but there's things that have happened in our past and traumas or childhood conditionings that need to be worked on in order to get to these other things. So for us to be open enough to see things that have happened in the past, or old wounds that need to be healed in order to move forward into the new circumstances, it's really important.
Yeah.
And I think cards are a really great way of helping with that.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, when I first started learning to read oracle cards, it was not to read for other people. I was just curious about cards in general, but I spent like a good at least 6 months only pulling cards for myself. And I would pull cards daily for myself. And it started out with 1 card a day. And then I, you know, increased to like a 3-card spread or whatever. And then when I felt like a little more comfortable, then I started like practicing on friends. So just like with everything that we talk about, it's like this unfolding. And even if at first you're like not trusting yourself, keep at it, because in time you will. So before we go into like some more maybe like tips around reading and reading cards contrary or upside down and blah, 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 let's talk a little bit about the difference between oracle and tarot, because a lot of people are drawn into oracle. They're very popular. There are oracle cards for like every category you could think of. But one of the decks that are very popular are the Doreen Virtue. She became very popular with the angel decks. And the difference with them, her cards tend to have like a full message on them, like a full definition. I don't have one near me. But like, say, for example, here's an oracle deck. It is called Work Your Light Oracle Cards.
Oh,
and I bought the deck, because I loved the imagery. But as you can see, I still haven't played with them yet. But see, like this one card, let me take the paper off. That may help everybody. This one card, it only has one word. It says yes. And then it just says, just say yes. Whereas some decks will not have much of a definition. Like, for example, this tarot card, all it says is the Fool. So some people like decks, oracle decks that have a full blown explanation on them. I prefer ones that don't, only because sometimes those can be in competition with what you're getting intuitively. And if you're reading someone and what you're getting is different than the definition on the card, they may not try, it just, but I mean, they're nice. I mean, I understand why people like them and love them and use them. But if you're practicing on strengthening your intuition, you may want to get a deck that doesn't have a full-blown explanation on them or definition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually don't have any decks that have definitions on them. No, not at all. But I think I do have one of Doreen Virtue's decks, and it's Angel Answers, and they're just very specific, like yes, no, or like yes, exclamation point. They literally just have one words on them, and admittedly, they make me a little nervous to use because they're so distinct in their message.
Yeah.
And it's so black and white with what it is. But I have used them a few times and they have been so crazily spot on that I'm like, how did that one card come out of the deck for exactly what it was we were talking about?
Well, one of the things too, I mean, so that's one consideration is if they have definitions on the card or if they have just a single word. A lot of them will just have one word. But think of like what you feel called to, what you may like. Again, I mean, you may end up with a bunch of different cards and they all call to you for different reasons. But while I'm showing this really quick, look at this. This deck is really cool, isn't it?
It's so pretty.
Yeah, it's really
I want to get
pretty.
it now. What is it? Radiant of Light?
I'll tell you in a second. Look at this one. Warrior Woman.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
it is called Work Your Light Oracle Cards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I haven't really played with this deck yet, so I can't tell you much about it other than I bought it because I love the imagery, obviously. But yeah, I mean, so you may be called to different decks for different reasons, and sometimes you may just end up really liking a particular artist or a deck creator, whatever it may be. But then here's just to show you a contrast. So this deck, I don't really know what the focus is because I haven't played with it yet. But this deck I bought specifically because it's about astrology. It's a Black Moon astrology oracle cards. And oracle cards, how they differ from, one of the ways they differ from tarot is the decks can have any number of cards. There's no set number. Like this particular deck has like, I don't even know, 52 cards. There's 52 cards in this one, and this one has only 44. But Oracle, it's like there's no set rules. But look how pretty these are.
Yeah, really pretty.
So this deck is very specific to the energy of the signs, the planets, and things like that. But you can also read with these cards because those energies speak to different energies that we hold and what's going on for us. So I don't know. What do you have?
You're going to make me jump on Amazon after this and have to buy some new cards. Well, like I showed you, this is my favorite deck, the Energy Oracle cards.
Yeah.
And there's 53 in these, and they're all very different. They're very different. Like there's chakra cards in there. There's angel cards. There's an angel of strength. There's a walking away. So they're kind of all over the map. And that's what I like about these because it's a broad idea of messages. It's not just strictly one vein like astrology, but I do love those cards. So I feel like these are just they're energy oracle, and I feel like they speak to energy of just life altogether. The other ones that I have with me right here are just that they're the Rider-Waite Tarot, the originals, as we saw earlier.
Yeah.
And I like these. I like the traditional ones because I feel like they are the traditional flagship tarot cards. And then a lot of the other ones are kind of built off of these. So I feel like these are good to learn from and have the clearest, most concise messages as far as reading goes. Because there's so much information in each one of these cards.
Yeah. When I wanted to study tarot, that was part of the reason why, I don't know if you ever played with or looked at the Tarot Marseille or Marseille Tarot. They're actually older than the Rider-Waite, but they're more, I guess Rider-Waite, how would you say? Like more, these are more popular here, definitely. But I was really curious to see like what the differences were. So if you haven't looked at it yet, just look at it and we'll talk about it behind the scenes. But one of the reasons for tarot, why I love Rider-Waite Smith deck as well, is because of what you said. I like that it pulls in so many different systems like astrology and even numerology, the numbers on the cards. And, you know, some people think it has, I don't know, my mind is going blank, Hermeticism and just all types of systems and schools of thought in terms of this esoteric realm in these cards and like the imagery and these different things. So they can also bring you into deeper studies of other things. And like you said, they offer such a depth in reading. So just really quick to say about the difference. So like we just pointed out, oracle cards, they could be about any topic. They could have as many number of cards as the creator wants them to have. Some of them have certain systems in place that are specific to that deck. Tarot cards, you can also find tarot cards that have different themes, like they might be animal or shaman or traditional, whatever. They're all over the map now too. But traditionally, there are 78 cards. There are 22 cards that are considered major arcana. Then there are 56 cards that are considered minor arcana. Within the minors, you have 4 different suits, and the suits are symbolized traditionally in this deck with wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, which also correlate with 4 elements of water, air, earth, and fire, which also correlate to energies of us, like our emotion, our thought, and on and on and on. So there's more of a system to tarot. It's a little more structured, I guess you would say, than oracle.
Yeah. I'll throw in one more thing. They're not cards, but they're oracle reading, which is the bag of runes here. So the runes are they're signs and symbols, usually on stones or like ceramic pieces like this, and they're ancient Nordic. They use these as, I don't want to say fortune telling, but I mean,
Divination.
I think that's, divination. And the ancient Nordics, it was the way people just operated back in the day when we didn't have any other forms of knowledge, you know, when we didn't know what the sun was, or like, you know, imagine living as a Viking in those days where it was cold and they were fighting, you know, like this was kind of their way of centering their focus and getting answers of what steps to take next. So that's kind of essentially what we do now in some other manifestation of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting when you think about it, because so many different cultures have different divination tools that they read. They use in the same way, but they're different things. So like oracle cards I love because you do have imagery. And again, this could be beneficial to people who may be more visual. You could get a feeling from the card. You may be more analytical and just want to memorize the meanings, whatever. It gives you a lot of different ways to perceive information through these because of, you know, the way they work. But then, like you said, there's runes. Some cultures, they read bones, you know, like in Taoism, you can read, what are those, the Chinese coins, like literally like little
I Ching.
Yeah, I Ching or I Ching, yes. And then what you just said, the reading the teacups, like the Turkish coffee you drink and then they read the cup. I mean, people use so many different tools to read intuitively. Like, it's just phenomenal.
And I mean, let's bring that back to what the origin of all this is that it's our own personal intuition. It's things that we already know and that we can attune to understanding, but these are just tools of it. And all of it's already inside of us.
Totally. Like I always tell people, it's like you are literally right now sitting in a sea of information. Like, we're constantly sitting in a sea of information that we just may not be perceiving consciously. But like you have your own energy, the people around you are generating energy, the room that you're in has a particular energy. You're just literally sitting in a sea of like codes and information and whatever. And you can use certain things to bring that information through in a way that you can translate or read and go like, oh, that's what's being floating around here.
Mm-hmm. But let's again back that up to calling out the fact that a lot of us don't sometimes want to know things or understand them.
Yeah.
We have a resistance to information.
And that's why too, I mean, like, why it's really cool that you can choose how to kind of frame how you use the cards by the spreads that you choose. So for example, I personally don't like predictive because people get on edge about like, oh my
Yeah.
God, is this going to happen? What's going to happen? Blah, blah. Like predictive, I have no interest. It's just not my thing. And I truly believe like the decisions you make right now are what shape what unfolds anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, be present. So I
Yeah.
personally prefer to look at the energy of the situation, a card for the energy of the person, a card to highlight any challenge or obstacle, and then again, the moving forward. So that 4-card spread is my favorite go-to. And then from that, depending on the conversation that opens up around it, I may pull more cards, but that
Yeah.
is like my staple go-to for like a very basic general reading of what is the energy around the whole situation.
That's a really good point. I don't like the predictive aspect either of it. And I tell people, I'm like, these are not fortune telling. I'm not going to tell you how your future is going to unfold. But
Mhm.
the energy that's coming with this situation right now is the current energy is what kind of like will unfold in the future. Should you keep it? And I tell them, I'm like, you also have free will. So it's your choice. Like, this is where your energy right now is kind of directing towards. But it's giving you the knowledge of that maybe that's kind of how it could possibly unfold, but since you have that knowledge now, you can change that
And
because
I
you see the energy of it.
when we are asking these questions, a lot of times we're basically, whether we know it or not, just asking to understand the energy around ourselves
Right.
or the situation. So like some of the most popular questions people ask are always relationship, work, health, and money. Those 4 things.
Yep.
If you come and you want a reading about any of those, you probably have a concern about it. And really what you like, what would benefit you is understanding the energy around it. What is the energy around your relationship? What is the energy you hold? What energy are you contributing to this? What is the energy of the person, the other person? Again, the obstacles and the solution. What will help you move forward? But the thing is exactly what you said, Tiffany, is you have choice and free will. So if you look at a situation and you go like, oh, okay, this is the energy around it, but now what are you going to do about it? It's entirely up to you. And the choices you make will determine how things unfold or contribute to how things are unfolding. And I think that is such a good one to point out because a lot of people want to just put entire, like, relinquish their own responsibility and just go like, oh, well, the card said, like, no, you still play a part.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blaming the cards. That's a whole nother topic, right?
Right.
The card said it was going to work out this way. So it did. And, you know, all the bad things happened that they said they would. So I'm not responsible,
Right.
which brings us back to one of, I feel like, the foundations of the Mind Body Energy Project is how we are responsible for our energy and thus how our life is being experienced.
Yeah. And so I guess even with that too, I would highlight like me personally, the only way I use cards is just for clarity. That's it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't use them to get answers or to like, again, predictive. It's more of like, I need clarity around whatever's going on so that I can make a more informed decision for myself. And that's
Right.
basically it. And if you come to me for a reading, that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to tell you what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point. I feel like sometimes when I am reaching out for my cards, it is because I need something tangible to help me focus a little bit more trying
Mhm.
to get answers. Because when we're left to our own devices, these minds can get really crazy and cluttered and we get monkey mind. And sometimes meditation isn't even enough. And you need some kind of like honing process and something tangible to hold and something to look at to really pull out what we know we want to get to, but maybe we're distracted of getting to it somehow.
Yeah. And, one of the things too about this is you can have, create spreads that are very specific to events. So like for our Patreons, we're going to put together some information for you to help you create a New Year's spread for yourself. But you can do for everyone. I mean, you can, set up a spread or consider placements of cards to reflect different things. Like maybe look at what is the energy that you learned in this year? What was highlighted for you this year? What are the, challenges that you still may be overcoming, and how do you move through those? And then a lot of people also look at a theme for themselves, like what will be the focus of 2019 for me? What is that energy going to be like? What cards could I pull to speak to? What will best support me? Blah, blah, blah. So there's so many things and ways you can play with them that, it's just unbelievable. And if you are a Patreon, you already know that Tiffany and I pull cards every month for our Patreons. We pull cards and she pulls a rune to speak to the overall energy of the month. We pull cards to speak to the energy of different moon phases. They just can be used in so many ways that it's really a lot of fun, but ultimately they're also helping you to tune into your intuitive way of seeing and translating energy.
Yeah, as you were saying that, the thought came through that it's also a good way to get to know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
To see how, like, you pull a card and see how you react to it, or see what it pulls up for you and your reaction to whatever it's drummed up, and starting to think a little bit more about what has created you, like what has conditioned you to be who you are, and is that something that you want to work on, or is it something that you want to enhance? I think I think we have a lot of trouble really getting to know ourselves. And people are oftentimes like, I don't know who I am, or I don't know how to do it. This is a really good way of getting to know yourself if you're open to really receiving that.
It's funny now that you say this too. One of the first spreads I actually ever played with, which if you guys do this for yourself, let us know on the Facebook page what cards you pulled and what came up and how you translated it. But the first deck I told you I learned to read was from, it was a chakra inspired oracle deck. And from that, I would always play with reading my chakra energy. So I would literally connect, breathe into one chakra at a time and pull one card to reveal, like, what is the energy I'm generating in this chakra. And so at the end of the spread, I would have my 7 cards laid out and just look at kind of, again, like, what is the story? How are they interacting? What does it all mean? Yeah.
That's when I said I rarely do bigger spreads, that when I do bigger spreads, that's one of them that I do, is pulling for the chakra energies. And I love it because there's so much information. And as we've talked about this, the chakras, I've based my holistic wellness company on the chakras being the outline of how we do get to know ourselves and how do we maintain health by way of understanding ourselves through the chakras, because they're such an individualized energy for everything that makes us up as a human. So it can really help you hone in and focus. So if we're pulling cards to understand what the energy of the chakra is, it helps us understand ourselves on those 7 different levels. Not that we're only 7 levels, we're multifaceted.
Yeah.
But they're major ideas.
Yeah. And again, it's just a cool thing. I'm glad we were talking about this because I think that a lot of people do have an idea that cards, whether oracle or tarot, are just for predictive work. And I think, in this conversation, we've highlighted, obviously, they can be used in so many ways. And I love that you really did emphasize the getting to know ourselves, because, again, that's exactly what drew me into them and how I used them prior to ever even attempting to read anybody else. It was all looking at my own energy and what I was holding. And I loved that deck. I used to carry that deck in my purse. Like, I really built a relationship with that deck. And so, I don't use it.
Isn't that all we're really here for, is to really understand ourselves?
Yeah.
All in all, like, day to day.
And we have all these different methods of doing that, whether it's like the people we interact with that help
Yeah.
support us in recognizing our triggers, what we're grateful for. I mean, it happens through everything, our work, your
Everything.
career, like everything. The
And
person,
even the things that distract us, even the
yeah,
things that we numb ourselves with, it's still a manner of really, if you observe it, getting to know yourself and who it is or what you're made of,
right.
why we're here. Are we inching down the rabbit hole of what the meaning of life is?
Discover the meaning. Yeah, well, I
Oracle
think
cards, the way to
oracle
the meaning of
cards.
life.
Honestly, I mean, like, really think about it. Everything that we talk about points to that. And because everything we
Right,
talk about
exactly.
points to understanding yourself in another way. And again, one of the things I think both of us, I would say, why we, have so many different interests, and we do, and we have played with all of these different tools. Like, we haven't even told you guys everything yet. But I think, one, we're both very curious, but I think it's also so fun when you recognize they all do just point back to you. I mean, it's fascinating that you could have all of these different tools, modalities, philosophies, all of it, and they all point back to you, but they give you, like, maybe one day you feel like pulling cards. Maybe one day you don't. Maybe one day you feel like going to a yoga class, like whatever it is,
Yeah.
like, you have options, and they all can support deeper understanding of you. So I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about her all the time, but look how pretty she is in this card.
Yeah. I know.
I
I like
really
that
like
card.
this deck is so bright and gorgeous. I'm like, oh, ooh, I'm loving it. Okay, so we told you about the difference between tarot.
That's a new one. Maybe it will make the MBE Project Tarot card.
Yeah, make a tarot deck.
Yeah.
That is so funny. Tarot.
Coming in the spring of 2019, MBE
Yeah.
Project Tarot cards.
So we told you, okay, so just one last thing, and then I'll ask Tiffany for some tips. One thing too, you'll often hear about in decks is reading contrary, which means that you don't just have the cards right side up. This is my Deviant Moon deck, and I also love this deck. It's tarot. But so when you shuffle cards, like, some people shuffle them so that they all are always right side up, which is fine. I mean, you can read cards however you like. Some people shuffle them so that some cards may come out upside down. And this is reading contrary. And people have different ways of explaining what an upside down card means in a reading. For some decks and some people, it just means like the opposite side of whatever that card means in its upright state. For some people, it's like revealing what is hidden. For some people, it's the darker side of whatever that particular energy is. I mean, on and on and on. So many different things, but it's really a personal choice, reading contrary or not. For a very long time, I didn't. For years, I didn't. And it's actually something that I've just started to play with because why not? I don't know. What about you? Do you read, or do you keep them all right side up?
I do both. The Energy Oracle deck that I use most often, I read upside down as well. The tarot I go back and forth with because, again, like we said, there's so much information in those cards, and it's I'm still learning them. So as I move through it, I go back and forth between reading right side up and upside down. Because when you add the upside down, it's a whole nother element to it. So I think it's good. I think it's good to get to really understand the tarot right side up. Oracle cards are easier to read reverse, but the tarot, I think it's good to really learn right side up because then you really understand what the message of the card is, and then you can start to apply intuitively what the reverse indicates.
Yeah. And one thing too, just to touch on this in case, I don't know if we said it or not, but a lot of people clear their deck, like energetically clear the cards after each reading, or clear the deck and set another intention before each reading. Again, it's preference, whatever you like to do. And I wanted to ask you if you have anything that has helped you deepen your connection with the cards, any like tools or practices or things that really supported you in reading cards?
Well, just the curiosity of it. I read like 1.5 books about it. And I made a spreadsheet. I told you about this.
Of course. No, I've seen your astrology spreadsheet. I didn't know you had a card spreadsheet too.
I do. So I made a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. For those of you that don't know, I'm obsessed with Excel. Part of my financial background is because of that. But because the tarot, like you said, they're integrated with astrology and elements and all these different things. So I made a spreadsheet with the different characteristics of each card, and then you could put filters on them. So you can filter the similarities between cards and like really understand it. And then, oh my God, I'm giving out all of my nerdiness.
Yeah.
I'm also I made a flow chart of the major arcana. The major arcana, there's a flow chart. It's because you see, like, it's
I'm sorry. Whoa.
God damn it.
No, we all have our way. It's freaking amazing. I'm here for it.
But it is a flow chart of, like, from the Fool until the World. Is the World the last card? From the Fool until the World. There's a story of the Fool's evolution through the major arcana, and that's our own personal story of evolution as well. So in order to understand that, I needed to see, like, what from in between each card, like, what was the bridge that jumped this card to the evolution of the next, and the flow chart was the best way to do that.
This is what I love about this, like, about the Mind Body Energy Project, because I mean, like, I think we can't escape showing that there is more than one way to do everything. You really have to do what resonates for you, what works for you. But what you were saying, it reminded me of, like, say for example, here's my traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I don't have a flow chart, but I use a Sharpie. Whoop, and I put only on the major arcana cards, like, I have symbols that I've drawn in that show which is the associated planet with the card and the associated element. And so by knowing the associated element and planet, that gives me another layer of the energy of the card, as well as knowing the sign. So yeah, there's that. So holy moly. So for example, like for the Empress, she has the symbol here for Venus, which is also depicted down here in the image, but I drew it in for myself as well. She's Venus and Earth. So Taurus, very earthy, mother, abundant, all of these things. So, I mean, anyway, yeah, no spreadsheet, but you can also draw little symbols on the cards for yourself if that helps you to remember and have clarity of things. I like
But
you,
I mean,
Tiffy.
You what?
I said I just like you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's good to know that somebody can handle me with all of my weird idiosyncrasies. Thank you. And just, I mean, with everything and anything in life, it's practice, and it's a dedication and a discipline to doing it, which, maybe not all of us are always good at that, and that's okay. But, I think we discussed this. I don't remember in which podcast it was. I think it was maybe on manifestation, but the 10,000 hour rule. 10,000, you need to at least dedicate 10,000 hours of practicing something to master it.
Honey, I don't know if I can fall for that one. That just makes me feel like itchy and scratchy. Like, to put that number on it makes me like,
I know it's overwhelming. Crap. It's super overwhelming. And because I was reading, it was a Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, I think is the one. And it was highlighting, musical prodigies. If you want to be really good at an instrument, and I've always wanted to be really good at an instrument, but it's not natural to me. And I just don't have the discipline or desire to dedicate 10,000 hours to it. That's a problem. So I will never be a prodigious musical instrument person.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, like, even with the cards and all of these practices, I think sometimes, like, we're really drawn in for whatever reason, and then we may walk away, and then it may come around again. So just know that's really normal as well, because when I first started reading oracle cards, I mean, I was obsessed. I mean, I told you I carried them in my purse, like I had them everywhere. And then there was like a year or two where I didn't touch oracle cards, like never used them, didn't read with them, nothing. And then I came back around again and I was like, oh, I want to revisit this. But then I got really connected to tarot. So, like know that as well. Like sometimes we go up and down, sometimes we go all in. Another thing too, just to share with you guys really quickly, for the Rider-Waite Smith deck, I think I told you this in the beginning, but I ordered a coloring book. So that has also been like, one, it's good meditation, but it also is another way for me to strengthen my relationship with the cards. Because when you're like literally coloring in every detail of every card, you start to notice elements of the cards that you may have not noticed otherwise. So that has been quite interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I dig that. Tarot.
We're going to create a tarot deck for you guys. Okay, well, I guess that's it. I mean, is there anything else that you think we need to say about the cards besides go?
No. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear people's experiences with it and how they use them and how they may be supporting people in their lives.
And I want to say this too, for next week when we have our live event or our next event, whatever, because we may have to pre-record because of the holiday. Have a deck available. Have an oracle deck with you or a tarot deck, because maybe we'll even play around with pulling some cards and seeing what comes up for everyone. So have that handy. And one last thing, suggestions for choosing a deck. If you don't have a deck and it's something you're curious about, I always recommend going to a store, local, like, what do you call these stores? I don't know, like a mystical bookshop. What do you
metaphysical shops?
Most cities have some kind of metaphysical shop where they sell like books and tarot cards and crystals and all these things. A lot of times they have display cards that you can actually look at and see and just notice if you feel drawn to that deck. Not every deck can speak to you. So,
Right. And even if you're drawn to maybe say the cover of the box, I also recommend really getting into the actual deck, because there's been plenty of decks that I got really overzealous about. And I was like, oh my God, I love it. And then it was just the cover of it. And then I like really started looking through the cards and I was like, nah, it's really not my thing. So before you start spending hundreds of dollars on all these decks, because it's really easy to do that. It's really easy. It can get out of control real fast. So,
and I just want to say too, like, not every deck is necessarily like going to feel like a reading deck for you. So like this deck that I showed you, that's really gorgeous. I'm sure there are people that do readings with this deck, but for me, this doesn't feel like a reading deck for me, but it is a deck that I would use. Not what I mean is I wouldn't necessarily do a whole spread with this deck, but say I was doing a reading with these cards and then I wanted to do a one card. What did you call it? You called it something, some kind of card. But if I wanted to pull a card just to say like, oh, let's look at the energy of this entire reading, I might pull one card from this particular signifier. Yeah, like a signifier. So if that's also something that people do. Sometimes they do readings blending decks. Sometimes they'll use a particular deck for one aspect of a reading, but then the reading itself may be another deck. So a lot of things you could play with. That's what it comes down to. Do you blend decks?
I actually know. I don't believe I have. I've done readings at the same time, but with totally separate ones. But I've actually never thought to do it before, which is interesting.
Well, if you do that, let us know how it goes when we have our next event. And as always with everyone, please share with us your suggestions, recommendations for tarot, oracle. If there are decks that you guys love, share it in the comments on our Facebook page. If there are certain spreads that you love, share it. And if you just have questions, ask away, and we will make sure to cover it in our next discussion.
Yes. And as always, thank you for being with us and supporting the project and being part of the community.
Yes. Hope you guys got some good information from this. We'll see you next time.
Bye.